Hello and welcome to the Wilder Lincolnshire podcast from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. We're out and about today at Gibraltar Point Nature Reserve with Warden Richard. Hi, Richard.
Good morning, Melvyn.
And Assistant Warden Beth. Hello.
Good morning.
What a glorious day we've got here. I'm going to start off by saying something. There's a caterpillar crawling on your boot. What is it?
It's a cinnabar moth caterpillar.
And we've just seen what it hatches into eventually as well.
Yeah, we've seen a cinnabar moth coming up the path towards the Shorebird warden's hut. They like ragwort particularly, and we've got a little bit on site, and it's managed to follow me all the way here.
Very nice. Other things we've seen as we've arrived, we had skylark and meadow pipit in the air.
Yep, we had meadow pipits, so they're quite common here on the salt marsh, so our commonest breeding species. They've actually suffered quite a heavy decline in recent years. So they are amber-listed species, so suffered between a 25 and 50% decline in the last 30 years.
Now, we're talking about a success story here at Gibraltar Point, but also an area we have to keep very special. But it's actually moved quite a bit over the years because we're standing next to an observation point. Where are we?
So we're at the Shorebird hut at Gibraltar Point, so the southernmost end of the public access point here at Gibraltar Point.
And this building here, quite a small building, was used for what?
Yeah, so we used to use this hut quite a few years ago. So in the 1950s, this was the main sort of breeding habitat for little terns. So what you would do is you would sleep in the Shorebird hut, so doing night shifts, day shifts as well. So you'd be out there monitoring the birds day to day. You would also do all your observations from there as well, so you wouldn't disturb the birds so much.
What's incredible is, what you're saying is, this was where the birds were nesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so in the 1950s, it was the main breeding site for little terns.
And what's happened, because of the nature of the area, the land has shifted. So what's caused that?
Yeah, so it's quite dynamic habitat, most of the coast. So basically you've got quite a lot of accretion, so where the land's sort of spreading further south. So as you gain more land, you also lose a bit of land as well. So I've noticed here at Gibraltar Point, the habitat's very much shifted. So it's now much further south, so about a mile south of where it used to be. So on the Millennium Ridge, which is now the main habitat for little terns.
And what would we call that? Is that known as a spit, or is it not what we've got here?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a natural ridge, so we call them ridges. So the one here is the old spit. So kind of variations, some are spit, some are ridges. So if we look to our right now, this is the outer ridge. This was formed, so the old spit behind us was 1950s. And the outer ridge across here, that was in the 1980s that was formed. And then beyond that, you got the Millennium Ridge, which is the current nesting site for little terns. That was formed in 2000.
So you've mentioned one of our key species we're going to talk about today, little terns. How important is it to look after the nest site here for little terns?
Yeah, so it's very important. So historically in Lincolnshire there was 9 breeding sites for little tern, and now we're down to the current day just 1 breeding site in Lincolnshire.
Just one?
So Gibraltar,
here?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so Gibraltar Point's now the only breeding site in Lincolnshire.
Why do we think that is? Why nowhere else?
So it's a mixture of things. So there's quite a few factors that influence the decline in little terns. So one thing's the habitat changes. So also like onshore storms in the winter. So loss of habitat. You've got disturbance from the public. So they say here in Lincolnshire we've got the highest density of caravans in the whole of Lincolnshire, in the whole of Europe. Also predation as well, so like foxes, carrion crows. We've also seen little egrets as well, taking little tern chicks in the past. So many things sort of against little terns.
Right, okay. Where have the little terns been in the winter months, and to come back here then?
Yeah, so they winter in West Africa. So what they do is they'll arrive here in the UK, usually sort of last week of April. They'll start nesting sort of last week of May, typically around the 24th, 25th of May. So it's quite systematic every year, always roughly the same week. And then they'll sort of breed here, from the end of May. First chicks typically sort of mid-June. They're fully fledged, so fledged means they're basically independent and they can fly. They've got fully developed wings, they can fly. So they then start flying sort of late July, and then by August they're straight off back to Africa.
Wow.
So it's a very short window really, so it's sort of 2 or 3 months and they're off again.
And how do they decide where they're going to nest? Are they looking for a particular habitat?
Yeah, so it's quite a mystery really. Yeah, so main habitats are the shingle ridges, that's a mixture of sort of sand and stones. And here at Gibraltar Point, because the habitat's so dynamic, it does change. So every high tide can completely change the habitat and reshape it. So it's never the same year on year.
Let's just have a look at this map that you've brought along, just to show me. And when we look at this, we can see where the actual hut would have been. That's still there now. But actually, this whole area to the bottom, that's now fenced off during the breeding season, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So we have this fence here called the Shorebird Sanctuary. This is closed off from the 1st of April until the 1st of September every year. This has been going on since 1976. So next year's our 50th year of this fence and the Shorebird Sanctuary here at Gibraltar Point.
See, I was imagining an area sort of like 50 metres by 50 metres, but there's no guarantee the birds would nest within that site.
Now, so the kind of the key thing really is kind of like zoning the habitats. So because it's very important to get public on site, so we don't want to close off the entire reserve. You want people to kind of go and experience things as well. So it's quite important, I think, to kind of zone the habitat. So you've got some areas where public can't go, some areas where they can go. I think it's quite important to do that.
And it's always a fine line, isn't it, between, we want public support, we want people to come to the site, but you have to keep some areas special as a reserve.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And with something like this, we've got that going on and the fence, but you mentioned predators, so we need to try and keep predators off the site as well, do we?
Yeah, so it's always an ongoing challenge every year. So so main threats to little terns and ground breeding nesting birds, so like ring plover as well, and oystercatcher that we also look after. So foxes are kind of the main threat, so particularly overnight. So Beth's worked out in the past, so the main activity for foxes are between 11 p.m. and 3 o'clock in the morning. So we also do night shifts as well, so people employed to do like night shifts each night as well. So once the first little tern chicks have hatched, they become quite mobile, because while they're on eggs, they're quite safe in the enclosures. The nets are also electrified, so it keeps all the foxes out during the daytime. And also while the chicks haven't hatched yet, but as soon as the chicks become mobile, that's quite important then to do the night cover to keep the foxes out at night.
Okay, let's bring Beth into the conversation here then. So one of your volunteer roles was looking after the birds that were nesting on the shoreline.
Yeah.
So tell me how you got involved with that to start with.
Well, I was Shorebird Warden in 2023, so essentially I was residential volunteering in 2019 as well for a brief stint during the summer and helping out as best as I could on the beach, as well as doing other reserve work. But primarily during 23, when I was the warden, I was out here looking after the birds, making sure that nothing was trying to eat them or anything like that. People getting into the sanctuary were kept out, but it was quite heavy for predator pressure. So we was getting a lot of foxes in the night, obviously a lot of foxes, tragically, but we was doing our best to keep them out.
Several foxes at a time, or would they come through individually?
They'd come through individually, so what I worked out was that they were coming in en route, so you'd see them in the night, you would scan for eye shine, and bright glowing yellow eyes meant, yep, that's a fox, and you need to do your best to shout and scare it off.
But hang on, you're here on the beach on your own, and you've got these eyes looking at you.
Yep.
That sounds awful.
It's quite scary, but it's quite peaceful out here at night, it's quite lovely, really, quite different to in the daytime, but you've got a job to do, and these birds need protecting, and if I can shout fox away, I'll do my best to try.
Okay, so what do you're looking out for the fox.
Yep.
What do you then do? Have you got a football rattle? What do you do?
We shout. We've tried an air horn in the past, but we've got a big torch essentially. So we scan the marsh for eye shine, and we're picking up different colours. So hares, which frequent the beach quite a lot, which you often don't expect. And
hares on the beach.
Hares on the beach, yeah.
Right.
Deer as well, which you also don't expect. They'll be out in the night scanning around, as well as the shorebirds, but they've got different coloured eyes to the foxes. So the foxes really are quite glowing yellow, and you're scanning for them, you see them, you start shouting to try and make as much noise as possible to scare them off, and obviously scanning with the torch as well to make sure they know you're there, the shorebirds are protected.
Really interesting point you make, though. So deer, but they wouldn't be going after the nests or the chicks or anything, but they could trample them, couldn't they?
Absolutely, they could. It's a weird sort of pressure because they don't necessarily pose the same kind of threat as a fox. Obviously, a fox would eat the eggs, it'd eat the chicks, whereas a deer might naturally stumble upon the eggs and cause a clutch to fail.
Yeah. So you've got your tent.
Absolutely.
You're out there trying to protect these birds. What sort of things are you actually doing, as well as scaring foxes?
So we're basically just sitting out and waiting for them to turn up and make sure that they're safe. So we do 6-7 hour stints at a time. So we sit in our tent, especially on the really bad weather nights when it's chucking it down with rain or it's a bit of a high wind. But we'll get out the tent every 10 or 15 minutes, scan for eye shine. If we don't see anything, we sit back down. If we hear any alarm calls as well, so little terns will alarm for predators. They'll start making a call, and you're like, well, this fox has creeped up in the past 5 minutes, started walking down the marsh, come over the creek from the visitor centre just behind us, and come straight into the sanctuary. But if they're not facing you, they don't see the light, you're not necessarily going to catch the eye shine. So the birds are doing a good job of letting us know as well.
What about things like high tides? Because they are nesting on the gravel, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Luckily, high tides aren't in the peak of the night. They aren't at midnight. They're typically really early morning or late at night.
Okay. Do you have to move the nests at all? And is there a danger in getting involved in doing that? You'll put the parent birds off?
Absolutely, yeah. So if some tides are quite extreme, so anything from a 6.5 metre up to 7 and beyond is considered quite dangerous for birds. The wind could make a difference and push the waves up a lot higher than we're expecting. So if we're out there monitoring, we make sure we cover the really high tides. And if we know a nest is quite low down, we'll try and move it out of the way.
Some exciting news today, Richard.
Oh yeah, so quite pleased to report this morning that the first 2 little terns of 2025 were hatched this morning.
Hey, and you've been out, you've taken a photograph.
Oh, absolutely, yep. So we were out there this morning about 6 o'clock. There was a bit of a threat of a high tide this morning, so we're out there checking the nest first thing this morning.
What's it like when you're approaching the nest? Because I'm sort of thinking again, the birds that are there will be put off by foxes and everything. What about human intervention?
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting one. So in terms of the intervention side of things, we only tend to intervene if absolutely necessary. So like as Beth was saying about the high tide, so you wouldn't do any sort of protection methods unless you absolutely had to. So say if that nest was definitely doomed, it wasn't going to survive, then we would intervene and put sort of protection methods in place, so like cages or platforms or nests. Yeah.
Now, you're warden now, but you've actually been involved with the night shifts as well in the past, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So from 2014 up until 2018, yeah, quite a long time. So 6 years, is it?
Wow, my goodness. Yeah. And getting involved with that, what was it like for you? I mean, have you seen changes to the habitat even in a relatively short space of time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, the main breeding habitat, I can show you on the map just now.
Yeah.
So this is the Millennium Ridge. So there's a series of sort of shingle ridges across here.
Yeah.
This is known as the Millennium Ridge Finger.
Right.
We also had another ridge here called the Millennium Ridge Spur. So these were the main 2 breeding sites for little terns and ring plover in the past. And then over the last 5 years or so, this old shingle ridge here is basically got smothered in sand. Marrow grass has taken hold, completely taken over all the shingle ridge. It's no longer suitable now for breeding birds. That's completely gone just in my time here.
Oh my goodness!
Last sort of 10 years.
And you mentioned the marrow grass there. That's essential to hold the sand together, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it's basically the main species to come in. So once the sand ridge is formed, the marrow grass is the builder and binder of the sand dunes. So the first species that comes in.
Now, we're focused on little tern, but there are a couple of other species that we're also looking to protect as well.
Yeah, definitely. So we've also got ring plover. So in Lincolnshire, historically, there was quite a few breeding sites as well as little terns. So now in Lincolnshire as a whole, so Gibraltar Point's probably got about 90% of the ring plover population in Lincolnshire.
Right.
So basically most of those breeding pairs are here in the Shorebird Sanctuary. So it shows the importance of the Shorebird Sanctuary.
Yeah.
So year on year.
But will some nest outside the sanctuary?
Yeah, so funny you should mention that. So usually when we do find occasional nests, so like ring plover and little terns, so in the Shorebird Sanctuary as well, you kind of put like electric flexi net, we call it. So it's a 50-metre flexi net around the nest to keep the foxes out. Then you often find like a week or so after, you might find another nest, but it's just outside the fence.
Right.
So yeah, every year always challenges. Also to the north of the reserve, so just ahead of us here, you've got the Greenshanks Creek.
Oh, got you, yes, yeah.
So this area is very much quite high intervention, so lots of like management day to day, ways up at the Greenshanks Creek. So it's very much like non-intervention, so quite a few ring plover nests up there, so like 6 or 7 breeding pairs.
But you can't set up an area and hope they're going to nest within your area, can you?
You can't. So we have sort of thought about doing that in the past, like setting up some nets just so before the birds arrive in late April and just seeing what happens. Maybe they might choose to nest in those areas.
Yeah.
But the problem is most habitats quite isolated, so you get a nice shingle patch here and there. There's not really one big area.
Now, the other species we're talking about, Beth, is Oystercatcher, and you've been quite involved with a rather exciting project, haven't you?
Absolutely. So in 2023 there's been a lot of talk about Oystercatcher platforms, and we essentially do that for little terns anyway. So we'll raise little terns up onto a box and up onto stilts to basically stop them from getting foxed or from avoiding the tides, but it's not really been done for Oystercatchers before, and I thought my year let's do it. Let's see what comes of it. And so we go through a process of basically moving the eggs in the nest for an oystercatcher with all the stones that they use to mark their nest out into the box, kind of built up around the sand, so they get used to the shape of the box, so they know, oh, that's my nest. I'm still in the same spot, but I've got this weird square around me. They get used to the square. We take the sand around from the outside. They know, oh, my nest is actually a box. That's fine. I'm still going to nest there. And then we raise them up. And we did that in 2023, and that was the first successful pair of oystercatchers in the sanctuary for quite a number of years.
And we've just actually seen that raised box, because it's still there, isn't it?
It's absolutely. It's just over the way in the sanctuary, and you can see it from the main paths as well.
And I was looking through the binoculars. Did I see the head of an oystercatcher in there?
Absolutely, you did, yeah. So last year and this year, they've chosen to nest in the box themselves.
The same birds?
We think it's the same pair, yeah. They must have realised this was a great idea. I'm safe from the tide, I'm safe from the foxes. There's a little pressure coming only from aerial predators. And oystercatchers are quite good at scaring things away as well, so they'll go after anything from kestrels, sparrowhawks, buzzards, anything like that.
See, oystercatcher, they're quite a big bird compared to the other two species, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. Quite a lot bigger, so they're quite easy to spot in comparison. So they're big, well, I say big, but a black and white bird with a really bright orangey red beak.
And very distinctive call.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And as we've heard, both yourself and Beth, you started off as volunteers, you got involved on the site here. It's an opportunity for people involved with nature to come and take part in activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so every year since 1976, we've had a Shorebird Warden here. So it's quite a nice sort of progression into your career. So after you've done like your degrees or university studies, you can then come here for that sort of first job, that first step in the door.
Got you a job, Beth.
Absolutely, it did.
I'm liking that. And got some key people jobs as well. Who have we got mentioned on these reports here? 1996, who's that?
Yeah, so we've got here a report from Lee Marshall. So shout out to Lee, who was a volunteer here, then became the Shorebird Warden in 1996. So Lee then moved on to Welney, became the visitor centre manager at Welney on the Youth Washers for the Wildfowl Wetlands Trust, and is now heads up the head of reserves for Wildfowl Wetlands Trust.
My word. And somebody else here that I've come across several times, we're talking about Dave Bromwich, who I remember interviewing when he was warden at Wisby, but he's actually also been involved here then.
So Dave Bromwich was here as the Shorebird Warden in 1980. So
he won't want us reminding everybody it was 1980 though, will he?
That's before I was born in 1992.
Oh, Dave, you're going to have to get your own back on that one. But it is fascinating that we've got all these records as well. And I notice in here, this is actually a sketch drawing, a hand drawing of the location.
Yes, that's a very good spot actually. Yeah, so you see here, so we're standing currently just here at the Shorebird hut on the map. So you can see this was the main little tern breeding site here at Gibraltar Point. This is the old spit just behind us. And you can sort of see this might indicate a bit of vegetation coming in. So as it became salt marsh, so the start of the salt marsh coming in.
I wonder if Dave Bromwich has still got those crayons he used for that drawing. We'll have to ask him. We'll have to ask him. I mean, if people want to know more about careers in conservation or getting involved as a volunteer, what's the best thing to do?
Always after volunteers, so people doing sort of like beach patrol on the beach, also like monitoring the birds, doing like early shifts. If anybody's interested in doing that, they could email our email address, so it's gibnnr@linkstrust.co.uk.
Very good.
That'll be excellent.
Richard, Beth, thank you both very much indeed. We've got birds tweeting in the background. What a way to finish off this latest Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust Wilder Lincolnshire podcast.